Welcome to the Weekly Wars podcast, where two guys who talk about Star Wars way too much have decided to record it and let you listen. Be sure to check every Wednesday to get the latest episode. And now to Zach and Rhett.
Welcome to Weekly Wars, your weekly dose of all things Star Wars.
I'm Zach.
And I'm Rhett.
Howdy, guys. Welcome to episode 5.
This episode, we wanted to talk about some of our favorite and most interesting Rey theories. That is, theories about the origins of Rey, her parentage, or things of that nature, really.
You've probably heard a lot of these theories. Some of them are very obvious, but we just sort of wanted to give our thoughts and give our expanded universe insights into it. Just new expanded universe.
Right, and just briefly touch on a lot of these things that are a lot of fun to read about and pretty interesting thought experiments for people like us that way overthink it.
I still think, I don't know. I think Rey.
You think you don't know. That was the most insightful thing I've heard from you in so long.
Shut up. I'm just saying, I think Rey is a Force ghost who was killed by Kylo Ren when she was being trained as a Jedi. And she is so strong with the Force that she appears to be in physical form and sentient. And she doesn't know she's a Force ghost. So when people like hit her with a lightsaber or shoot at her with a gun, which she never gets shot, by the way, in the movie, she just reacts automatically.
So we're getting the most stupid ideas out of the way first.
Whatever. It's the best Rey theory ever. Force Ghost Rey.
No, we will touch on the best Rey theory ever. That'll be on the list. Don't worry.
Okay. Well, this is the best theory that I have come up with.
Oh, okay. I can allow that.
I have more, but we aren't going to talk about them because Rhett won't let me.
That's for another podcast. We'll get there.
At least I got to stick one of my theories in.
Never again.
Never again.
I take it all back. I don't want to hear anymore.
So let's talk about the first and most obvious theory.
Yes, and in my opinion, way too obvious to be what they actually do. If they come out and say Rey is Luke's daughter, I just will probably cry a little bit, I guess, because that's too much, honestly.
I'll tell you why I'm okay with it, more okay with it now than I was before, is after they released the little teaser for episode 8 announcing that they're doing film production, it could be that they're continuing episode 8 right from episode 7, which is a little different than they've done before.
Right.
And Rian Johnson has said they're going to be doing things a little different than before. But that means that he's not actively going to be hiding that information from her. It may be that they get right to episode 8 and the first thing he does is walks up and hugs her.
That is true. But I still believe that there's way too many pieces of dialogue throughout The Force Awakens that don't allow for that possibility unless they're going straight up Obi-Wan status. Like if everyone, Han, Leia, Maz, if they have all conspired at this point to keep her parentage a secret, then that's the only way I could see it.
So here's the concern that they could have, though, and the reason behind that. They're worried that she could turn into another Kylo Ren. She could be another Ben Solo. And so they went and hid her because they didn't want two people to be completely corrupted by the dark side. Corrupted by Snoke and become super powerful.
Well, yeah, so it's basically the Luke treatment. And I'm not saying that doesn't work. I'm just saying with how many complaints that they've already had about the similarities between The Force Awakens and the original trilogy, they're going to have to make a break. And this is one of the better places to make a break because there are so many good options for who could be her parents. And also, one of my biggest complaints about this, I love the Skywalker family. And Luke Skywalker is amazing. He is definitely one of my favorite Jedi. but I am totally ready to see the Skywalker line stop being the center of everything, which to a certain extent, there's with Kylo Ren, they are still continuing the Skywalker legacy, but I want Rey and Finn to step forward and Poe to step forward and be like, look, the Skywalkers aren't the only family that matters. This is who we are.
But to play devil's advocate, Kathleen Kennedy did say these movies are about the Skywalker family.
Yeah, with Kylo Ren. Now we can move on.
Well, it could be. It could just be Kylo Ren, but
Right.
she never clarified that statement. So, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I don't want her to be Luke's daughter.
Yeah, I just think on top of everything, or one of the more apparent reasons is just that it is too apparent. So that's at least my thoughts. And like I was saying before, they just have a lot of moments where, like, specifically Maz at the castle says, she's talking to Rey after the Force vision and says, you've been left, that they're not going to come back, but there's still someone that could. And Rey's like, Luke. It's not like dad or uncle or anyone. She calls him Luke because that's how Luke is referred to in the stories that she's been told.
And it could go either way. I think you could interpret that differently as well. I think they've left it open for themselves to sort of make that to mean, well, she wouldn't call him dad because she doesn't know he's her dad or whatever.
But in Empire, Luke gets his hand cut off, falls down a shaft, ends up in the Falcon, and when Vader calls out to him through the Force, he says father. He's known for like 15 minutes, and he's like, Daddy? I miss you.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying maybe she doesn't know, and that's why she doesn't say it. And so
that's true.
I think they've left it open on purpose.
Well, absolutely. They want this type of illusion around it so that people can get all excited and blah.
I do think it's worth mentioning that a lot of people thought the Disney Infinity had a spoiler where Kylo Ren refers to Rey as cousin, but actually one of the game creators came out and said, no, he gets shot and he says curses, not cousin.
Yeah, it was just the timing of everything in one specific playthrough that someone was like, hey, it sounds like he calls her cousin, but completely debunked via Twitter.
Yep. So another theory, which I think is very interesting, and I thought of this on my own before the internet told me, but then the internet was way ahead of me on this. They were talking about it for weeks before me. But I was in the middle of watching Clone Wars. That's why it came to me. But that Rey is actually descended from the line of Obi-Wan Kenobi.
I got to say that this is my favorite. Just because Obi-Wan Kenobi's my favorite, and I think that his story is one I want told through the ages, because I love him.
So the question comes up, who would it be? And massive spoiler alert, you should probably skip 30 seconds ahead right now if you don't want to hear maybe 2 minutes ahead. I don't know how long we're going to talk about this.
It totally depends.
But,
it could be variable.
If you haven't been watching the Clone Wars. But like all Jedi, Kenobi has sort of a fling with a Mandalorian lady named Satine.
I love how, like all Jedi, because literally in like every book that went and did in-depth character studies of different Jedi in the expanded universe, all of them had girlfriends or boyfriends. They all had romantic interests. Like no one, I think Yoda's the only one that they haven't gone in and been like, yeah, he was probably in love with this person.
I don't know. Why did they introduce Yaddle? I'm just saying.
Oh, okay. They did that too. Yoda has a girlfriend.
Yoda has a girlfriend. He even used his connections to get her on the Jedi Council for an episode.
Nepotism. Does nepotism apply to romantic interest?
Yes, I believe. Okay. Of some kind, probably.
Fraternization.
So anyways.
Satine is the Duchess of Mandalore, and she is the romantic interest of Kenobi. They introduce her and mention that back when Kenobi was still Padawaning along with Qui-Gon Jinn, that they met Satine and they had a brief moment, and then they both went on their separate ways, went on to fulfill their duties. Her as ruler of the Mandalorians, and he as a Jedi. And they meet up again, I guess, decades later at that point, so that he can protect her. And then they have a moment where they express their love for each other. That's just like, ah!
Obi-Wan sort of makes his statement somewhat vague in one of the moments. They're trying to make an escape or convince someone of something, and he says,
there's a guy holding a blaster to him.
Right, and he says, I would have left the order for you only if you had asked. But it seemed to serve more as a distraction, and so it's like sort of left ambiguous on purpose whether that was really true or not.
I disagree. I think that was pretty explicit.
Wow. Well, I believe it in my heart. But so what this does create, though, is a small timeline issue in terms of Satine does, spoiler alert, die in the Clone Wars. And so the question is, how would that happen? I would assume she could have had a child secretly, and then probably that child had a child.
Right. It's definitely a granddaughter.
Right.
If you're going with Satine as the possible.
And it could make sense because she would know that if she had a kid with a Jedi, it could affect her standing, sort of like Padme. And if a Jedi like Obi-Wan was found out to have had a child, it could affect his standing as a Jedi.
Yeah.
And so she could have had a child and just kept it hidden away.
Yeah. Like I said, I like that possibility just because, for one, it ties in a character from the Clone Wars, which is considered canon. So she is an actual canonical character. And just because Kenobi's my favorite. But one of the other things I think could be interesting is she could be related to Kenobi or even possibly other Jedi just through other family members besides that Jedi themselves. Because one thing that you never hear about with anyone is brothers and sisters to the people that were taken away and trained as Jedi. They could, or for the most part, they do have entire families wherever else. And if the Force is hereditary, so if it shows up in that one person, it could just be recessive in the rest of the family and show up later down the generational line.
So like Kenobi could have had a brother or sister who had a kid, and that was Rey.
Yes.
And so Luke sees her and is all like, why are you connected to Obi-Wan Kenobi or something like that?
Or even possibly before she was left on Jakku, Luke searches out the Kenobi line. Or, I mean, it would make sense to an extent that he finds families related to all the Jedi as much as he can with the records they have and search out their potential Force-sensitive children. Because if he, if you found out that there's a bunch of Windus living on whatever planet, you'd go find all the Windus to see if one of them could be the next Mace Windu.
Would you?
I would. Mace Windu was awesome.
No, it's true, though. I think that's a good way to go about finding Force users. In fact, we know from the original expanded universe, they came up with technology in order to check out the Force capability, different from just checking for midichlorians. Right. And so, maybe they had some of that technology. We really don't know. We may get the chance at flashbacks in Episode 8, sort of go into some of that, but...
Yeah, different storytelling style to introduce new elements.
Yeah, but we'll sort of see how it goes.
So I wanted to address really briefly this theory that I read on Reddit about Rey as a Kenobi, and I just thought it was hilarious. Essentially, this guy went into great detail about how he thought Obi-Wan Kenobi had an affair with Padme Amidala's handmaiden, Sabe. Sabe... As far as I remember, she only shows up in The Phantom Menace. And I believe that's actually the handmaiden that's played by Keira Knightley and is the one that more often assumed the role of the queen when Padme was undercover. So the idea being that Kenobi and Sabe spent a lot of time on the ship when they were on Tatooine. They're hanging out there together just the two of them, quote unquote, despite all the other dozens of people on that ship. But while they're hanging out, he had an affair with her, and then she goes on to carry a child, and then that child has a child, and that child is Rey, or something like that.
This is a good time to point out, I love that all these theories are so convoluted.
Right. Well, and that is probably the biggest debunking piece of evidence
Of
for
almost all
of them.
these, except for the like Luke and Rey theory, which is like too obvious, but the other ones are just like super convoluted.
There's no way you could portray that easily to a standard film going audience. Like they're not going to include this theory that takes extensive knowledge of all this weird stuff.
And if they're being smart, they'll probably have a main plot point like that be contained purely within the movies, right? They won't reach out. Well, on something it could be like Sabe, that's kind of minor, but like some of these things from the Clone Wars or Rebels, they probably wouldn't bring in to the theories just because general audiences don't always watch all of that. So they usually do callbacks to it, but a main plot point like who were Rey's parents probably is contained within the films themselves.
Right.
So,
well, and that point I think applies to our other theory of her being related to someone like Kyle Katarn or Kanan Jarrus or Ezra Bridger, because Kanan Jarrus, Ezra Bridger are from Star Wars Rebels, and I love the crap out of both of them as characters, but they are ancillary to the main film storyline. So it's more unlikely that they would be related. But I just love the idea of like, or with Kyle Katarn too. Like he was a very well-loved character from the old expanded universe.
I loved him so much.
And if they bring him back in that way, I think that's the best way they could do it. She's like, I'm Rey Katarn. And it'd just be like, yeah.
Yes, thank you for bringing Kyle Katarn back.
And then she starts shooting force lightning. And you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah, and a way they could introduce that, which would be super interesting, is have Kyle Katarn show up in Rogue One. Now, there's every indication that he's not.
Right.
But Disney plays things pretty close to the chest. They've been pretty sneaky about a lot of things, so Kyle Katarn could show up.
I think I'd be just pleased if he does. Like, if it's like, hey, here's Kyle. I'd just be like, okay. Like, I'm not expecting it, but if it happened, I'm going to be just so happy.
He would be
so
awesome. And one thing they are doing to sort of lean credence to the idea of that it could be like characters from Rebels or Kyle Katarn or something like that is Disney seems to be tying these universes together.
Right.
We've been listening to podcasts and seeing that there's elements from like the Old Republic, the video game, the MMO.
Yeah, Rebels Recon was Rebels Recon is a channel or one of the film series on the Star Wars YouTube channel, and they go and do behind the scenes with Star Wars Rebels. They talk to the creators of Rebels and Clone Wars, Dave Filoni and Pablo Hidalgo, and Pablo Hidalgo has said that there are many references to Knights of the Old Republic and the Old Republic video games in Rebels.
And Rebels is canon.
So there is definitely that possibility that they're going to do callbacks. And obviously, with the character of Kylo Ren being so similar to Jason Solo, they are incorporating these elements. So it's entirely possible that either Clone Wars, Rebels, or other expanded universe characters are going to influence who Rey is.
I also want it to influence Revan being inside of the movie verse officially as canon. That would be amazing. But that's totally unrelated.
He better be.
That's what we should do an episode on.
Yeah.
Characters from the expanded universe we want in the new canon.
I'm just saying, Raven?
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 What? We just made a new theory.
What?
She's totally the reincarnated Revan. That's what I thought Kylo Ren could have been in some distant way.
Oh, he is that virgins of the light and the dark, as Snoke says.
What?
It's entirely possible. Well, and the mask. Everyone kept talking about how his mask was Revan, and
that's
he
the
was
one
going to be
thing in the
Revan.
trailer, the second trailer when it came out. and I saw him, I was like, "Is that Revan?"
Right. I remember we had that moment.
That would have made me so happy, but it's okay as it is. Okay, so another theory that we've been talking about, which we've heard some different versions on the internet, and we were kind of wishy-washy on it, but we've discovered some information that sort of
one vital piece of
information that sort of gives some credence to it, which is very interesting, and also brings significance to Jakku as a planet,
right? Rather than just whatever,
just not Tatooine, basically, because that's what it is. It's not Tatooine, and that's what's going through your mind. You're all like, "What? Why did they just use Tatooine?" Well, there is a weapons facility, an Imperial weapons facility on Jakku, or there used to be.
Right. In the Battlefront video game, the Battle of Jakku is one of the missions you can do, and it's centered around the Imperials gathering at Jakku to have a final stand over this Imperial secret, super top secret Imperial weapons facility. But not only that, it's referenced in the visual dictionary. Star Wars Battlefront isn't considered exactly canon just because of what happens within the context of the game. You just have characters in places that they wouldn't be doing things that they wouldn't be doing at that time.
Darth Vader shows up on Jakku, even though he would be dead at that point. Stuff like that.
Luke shows up on Hoth in his Return of the Jedi garb with a green lightsaber, and he also can show up on Jakku. Well, I guess on Jakku that would make sense. But
it could be. But basically, the context is canon, but what actually happens in your online play is not.
Right. So, in the visual dictionary for The Force Awakens, it mentions this secret Imperial base. Now, it does say a weapons facility in Battlefront, but what I feel like is a possibility is that this weapons facility also had a cloning facility.
Which could be considered a weapon, honestly.
Well, they did make an entire army of clones. That was a pretty big weapon.
That was a big weapon.
But what I really like about that, and what brought this theory more credence to me, is because the expanded universe has many, 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 many instances of a clone of Palpatine rising to power and taking over the Empire again.
He transfers his spirit.
Yeah, using dark side voodoo magics. But so, to say that Rey could be a Palpatine, I think would just bring a whole level of, I don't know what you call it, opposing dichotomies into play. Like to have the son of Skywalkers, Kylo Ren, so drawn to the dark side, and then have what could be a daughter, quote unquote, a clone daughter like Boba Fett possibly, of Palpatine, or even... we discussed the possibility of like artificial insemination of DNA.
And what's interesting about that is he not only in the expanded universe, but in the Clone Wars, he is always making plans and doing things. Like he had the DNA sequenced of that massive monster that was destroying everything. The what was it?
I just watched that one.
The whatever beast.
The Tarrasque.
Yeah.
It's not the Tarrasque.
the Tilla Beast?
Zilla Beast.
Zilla Beast. There we go. Holy cow. The Zilla Beast, and so he's getting it cloned, and they have the clone army, and in the expanded universe he cloned himself multiple times, the old expanded universe that's not canon, but this is not inconsistent with the Clone Wars. So for him to have a strategy to at least continue his lineage is not out of the picture.
Well, and it's something that's been set up as a precedence in the films, because anyone who's seen the prequels know that clones are a thing, and if they paid attention to Attack of the Clones, they know they can allow clones like Boba to grow normally and become different people from the clone parent.
Well,
or
and
somewhat different.
Palpatine was basically single-handedly, I mean, he did have a little help, but basically single-handedly able to bring down the entire Jedi Order and take over the galaxy.
Right.
So when we're talking about, Rey is too powerful, if she's a Palpatine, she is underpowered.
Yeah. She should be doing a whole lot more. So
the other thing that we've talked about too is how Well, sorry, say what you're going to say. No, you're
I
good.
totally forgot now.
Okay, I'm
That's
sorry.
not your fault.
Well, just that when you're watching the movie, we seem to think that Rey was dropped off on Jakku, and that's what I believed watching it. But when I'm thinking back, looking at this theory, I'm like, well, not necessarily. Her family didn't have to have come to Jakku and left her with Unkar Platt. They could have just been living there.
Well, and that could also explain some of that, reason why Unkar Platt is so nice to her. It could be that maybe she's been there since before even him, and there's like the familial connection possibly. I don't know. That might be a little much, but
there's nothing to say that she hasn't been there the whole time.
Yeah, she could have been born in this
weapons facility on Jakku. So,
and then she just gets left. It's not brought there and left. It's just left.
Yeah.
So that is the one piece that made that theory palpable to me. Palatable? Palpable? Palatable. I meant palatable.
Platable. However you want to say it. So of the theories we've talked about so far, aside from the obvious one, that's probably what I consider to be the most likely. But I still don't think it's likely.
Yeah. I kind of want it just because that is a bloodline I'd like to see explored more. And again, Palpatine versus Skywalker, but just the reverse would just be so cool.
That would be awesome, because we really don't see that.
Yeah.
We never see that.
Yep.
There is Yoda versus Palpatine, but no Skywalker versus Palpatine.
It would be awesome.
I do think it's worth mentioning that it could be. I highly doubt it at this point, especially after reading the novel. But it could be that Rey's parentage is just not important.
And I think they won't do that, but I like the implication of it, to say that where she comes from,
it doesn't matter. It's not about where she came from, just like Moss says.
Yeah. Not where she came from, but where she's going.
And it may be that's why they had the line in the movie. You know, J.J. Abrams said him and Rian Johnson had a few chats about the script. Rian Johnson is directing episode 8, and Rian Johnson wanted some changes made to the script so that it would fit his continuity he wants to create going into episode 8 and some of the story elements.
Yeah.
And I don't know this for sure. This is totally a shot in the dark, but I mean, that could be a reason that he had Ma say that line. Like Rian Johnson could have said, I need her to say, it's not about what's in the past, it's what's in the future, so that I don't have to deal with it.
That's actually a good point too, in the context of him doing something differently, because the first 6 movies have been about the Skywalkers. Maybe he's going to take this next one and be like, hey, it's not as much about the Skywalkers as you think. And she is her own entity, and whoever her parents are, we don't care.
We don't care. Doesn't matter.
Well, people will care, but he doesn't care.
She's a clone of some random person. She's a clone of Boba Fett. That's my newest crazy theory. She's a Boba Fett. She's one of their original clones. She's a female version. She's a gender-bent clone.
I like it. Well, that's the same if she was Palpatine, but
yeah,
anyways.
Whatever
yourself.
All right, I don't even want to talk about this last theory. You can talk about it. Oh my gosh.
Whatever. You shared this with me, so this is on you, sir.
Well, I found it on imgur or imgur, whatever you want to call it.
Internet words.
This stupid internet.
So this is, I just love it because of how awesome it is. Basically, on imgur, someone went through and laid out their theory about how Ren and Rey are the offspring.
Offspring.
Leia and Wicket.
Wicket.
The Ewok Wicket.
Little Ewok Wicket. Which there are so many creepy memes about.
It's a little too creepy. But I just love it because it's so obvious that this guy knew he was just going off the rails, and he went full bore on it.
But yeah, he uses logic that most people use for theories.
Especially for stuff like the Darth Jar Jar theory. Like, he's like, you see Leia wearing this dress, and that was given to her by Wicket so that he could seduce her after something. I don't know.
Right? Well, and the one where he's all like, so Kylo Ren takes off the one mask, but he has a second mask that he takes off.
His beautiful shovel-faced mask.
Yes. To show his real Ewok humanish form.
And I love, he draws comparison like Wicket holds a stick and then Rey has her staff and then Wicket has a headscarf and Rey has a headscarf.
Right?
Like,
all these connections.
Like side by side picture comparisons. And it's like, I can't deny that. That's impossible.
We did talk about how to watch movies and you have to look for things and connect them.
Right? Callbacks, homages.
Exactly.
It's so, by and large, that is definitely the fan favorite theory, at least of this one fan.
I wonder what all the people, all the hashtag Reylo fans are going to think. Hashtag Reylo is a combination of Rey and Kylo, if you didn't know.
The celebrity name.
If they are related. I wonder if they'll still be fans of the relationship. We live in a new age.
With the love triangle of Finn, Poe, and Rey, it would be hilarious if in the end she's just like, nope, Kylo, peace, guys.
Even after we find out they're related?
He is a Solo. No, well, I don't know. It's Star Wars. It could be either.
It's not a good story without a little incest. I've said that before.
Apparently not.
Apparently. All righty. Well, thanks for coming with us this week and taking us on this little theory adventure where we had a lot of fun talking about it.
A lot of craziness, but also some interesting ideas.
Hopefully you got some cool insights from some of the stuff we talked about. And yeah, I guess we'll see you next week.
Let us know what you think about it all. And make sure to like and share our podcast as much as you are able. It would really help us out.
And may the Force be ever in your favor.